This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. That's LibriVox.org. Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne. Chapter 10, in which Passepartout is only too glad to get off with the loss of his shoe. Everybody knows that the great reversed triangle of the land, with its base in the north and its apex in the south, which is called India, embezzles 1,400,000 square miles, upon which is spread unequally a population of 180 million of souls. The British Crown exercises a real and despotic domain over the larger portion of this vast country, and has a Government General stationed at Calcutta, governors at Madras, Bombay, and in Bengal, and a Lieutenant Governor at Agra. But British India, properly so called, only embraces 700,000 square miles, and a population of from 100 to 110 millions of inhabitants. A considerable portion of India is still free from British authority, and there are certain fortuitous Rahas in the interior who are absolutely independent. The celebrated East India Company was all-powerful from 1756, when the English first gained a foothold on the spot where now stands the city of Madras, down to the time of the great Sepoy insurrection. It gradually annexed province after province, purchasing them off the native chiefs whom it seldom paid, and appointed the Governor-General and his subordinates, civil and military. But the East India Company has now passed away, leaving the British possessions in India directly under the control of the Crown. The aspects of the country, as well as the manners and destructions of race, is daily changing. Formerly, one was obliged to travel in India by the old cumbrous method of going on foot or on horseback in palanquins or unwieldy coaches. Now, fast steamboats ply on the Indus and the Ganges, and a great railway with branch lines joining the main line at many points on its route traverse the peninsula from Bombay to Calcutta in 3 days. This railway does not run in a direct line across India. The distance between Bombay and Calcutta, as a bird flies, is only from 1,000 to 1,100 miles. But the deflections of the road increase this distance by more than a third. The general route of the Great Indian Peninsula Railway is as follows. Leaving Bombay, it passes through Calcutta, crossing to the continent opposite Tena, goes over the chain of Western Ghats, runs through northeast as far as Berhampur, skirts and nearly independent territory of Bunclare, ascends to Allahabad, turns thence eastward, meeting the Ganges at Banners, thus departs from the river a little, and descending southeastward by Burdwan and French town of Chandigarh, has its terminus at Calcutta. The passengers of the Mongolia went ashore at 4:30 p.m. At exactly 8 the train would start for Calcutta. Mr. Fogg, after bidding goodbye to his whist partners, left the steamer, gave his servant several errands to do, urged it upon him to be at the station promptly at 8, and with his regular step, which beat to the second like an astronomical clock, directed his steps to the passport office. As for the wonders of Bombay, its famous city hall, its splendid library, its forts and docks, its bazaars, Moscow's synagogues, its American churches, and the noble pagoda on Malabar Hill, with its two polygonal towers, he cared not a straw to see them. He would not deign to examine even the masterpiece of Elephanta, or the mysterious Hognia concealed southeast from the docks, or those fine remains of Buddhist architecture, the Kanheri grottos of the island of Calcutta. Having transacted his business at the passport office, Phileas Fogg repaired quietly to the railway station, where he ordered dinner. Among the dishes served up to him, the landlord especially recommended a certain giblet of native rabbit, on which he prided himself. Mr. Fogg accordingly tasted the dish, but despite its spiced sauce, found it far from palatable. He rang for the landlord, and on his appearance said, fixing his clear eyes upon him, "Is this Rabbit, sir?" "Yes, my lord," the rogue bully replied. "Rabbit from the jungles." And this rabbit did not know when he was killed. "Mew, my lord, what a rabbit mew, I swear to you." "Be so good, landlord, as not to swear, but remember this. Cats were formerly considered in India as sacred animals. That was a good time. For the cats, my lord? Perhaps for the travellers as well." After which Mr. Fogg quietly continued his dinner. Fix had gone on shore shortly after Mr. Fogg, and his first destination was the headquarters of Bombay Police. He made himself known as a London detective, told his business at Bombay, and the position of affairs relative to the supposed robber, and nervously asked if a warrant had arrived from London. It had not reached the office. Indeed, there had not yet been time for it to arrive. Fix was sorely disappointed, and tried to obtain an order of arrest from the director of Bombay Police. This the director refused, as the matter concerned the London office, which alone could legally deliver the warrant. Fix did not insist, and was fain to resign himself to await the arrival of the important document. But he was determined not to lose sight of the mysterious rogue as long as he stayed in Bombay. He did not doubt for a moment, any more than Passepartout, that Phileas Fogg would remain there, at least until it was time for a warrant to arrive. Passepartout, however, had no sooner heard his master's orders on leaving the Mongolia than he saw at once that they were to leave Bombay as they had done Suez and Paris, and that the journey would be extended at least as far as Calcutta, and perhaps beyond that place. He began to ask himself if this bet that Mr. Fogg talked about was not really in good earnest, and whether his fate was not in truth forcing him, despite his love of repose, around the world in 80 days. Having purchased the usual quota of shirts and shoes, he took a leisurely promenade about the streets, where crowds of people of many nationalities, Europeans, Parisians with pointed caps, Banyans with round turbans, Sindhus with square bonnets, Parsees with black mitres, and long-robed Armenians were collected. It happens to be the day of a Parsee festival. These descendants of the sect of Zoroaster, the most thrifty, civilized, intelligent, and auspicious of the East Indians, among whom are contacted the richest native merchants of Bombay, were celebrating a sort of religion's carnival, with processions and shows, in the midst of which India dancing girls, clothed in rose-colored guez loped up with gold and silver, danced airily, but with perfect modesty, to the sound of violas and the clanging of tambourines. It is needless to say that Passepartout watched these circus ceremonies with staring eyes and gaping mouth, and that his countenance was that of the greenest booby imaginable. Unhappily for his master, as well as himself, his curiosity drew him unconsciously farther off than he intended to go. At least, having seen the Paris Carnival wind away in the distance, he was turning his steps towards the station, when he happened to espy the splendid pagoda on Malabar Hill, and was seized with an irresistible desire to see its interior. He was quite ignorant that it is forbidden to Christians to enter certain Indian temples, and that even the faithful must not go in without first leaving their shoes outside the door. It must be said that here that the wise policy of the British government severely punishes a disregard of the practices of the native religions. Passepartout, however, thinking no harm, went in like a simple tourist, and was soon lost in admiration of the splendid Brahmin ornamentation which everywhere met his eyes, when of a sudden he found himself sprawling on the sacred flagging. He looked up to behold three enraged priests, who forthwith fell upon him, tore off his shoes, and began to beat him with loud savage exclamations. The agile Frenchman was soon upon his feet again, and lost no time in knocking down two of his long-gowed adversaries with his fists and vigorous application of his toes. Then, rushing out of the pagoda as fast as his legs could carry him, he soon escaped the third priest by mingling with the crowd in the streets. At 5 minutes before 8, Passepartout, hatless, shoeless, and having in the squabble lost his package of shirts and shoes, rushed breathlessly into the station. Fix, who had followed Mr. Fogg to the station and saw that he was really going to leave Bombay, was there upon the platform. He had resolved to follow the supposed robber to Calcutta, and further if necessary. Passepartout did not observe the detective, who stood in an obscure corner, but Fix heard him relate his adventures in a few words to Mr. Fogg. "I hope that this will not happen again," said Phileas Fogg coldly, as he got into the train. Poor Passepartout, quite crestfallen, followed his master without a word. Fix was on the point of entering another carriage when an idea struck him which induced him to alter his plans. "No, I'll stay," muttered he. "An offense has been committed on Indian soil. I've got my man." Just then the locomotive gave a sharp screech, and the train passed out into the darkness of the night. End of chapter 10. This has been a TBOL3 production.